That's why this is
Now, like I say, we're just going to pick up from where we left off, but today, big bullet point is we're going to do some indirect crimes. Now, these are called indirect for a couple of different reasons, but really, there are different levels of involvement. Now, we're going to get to kind of all those levels and really the culpability that comes with it. But first, we got to talk about some other things. The question, Pat?
Is this continuing our message from the other day?
Just continuing those. But this is the new big bullet point. First up, I'm going to give you a handful of these indirect crimes. Now, first one is going to be what's called the accomplice to a crime. Now, before I get started here, I need to ask, do you know who these people are? Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde are going to be two outlaws in the 1930s who are going to be connected to a string of bank robberies, even assaults, even like private burglary as well. They have their own kind of miniature crime spree, but they're actually very successful at what they do. They are very good at kind of getting in and getting out fast. Now, this is going to be a couple that kind of shocks the nation at the time, because the overwhelming majority of people doing this were men. Bonnie makes things a little complicated in that she's kind of fulfilling a role that most of the time women don't do. She's firing guns, she's holding people up. She was very violent. Now I gotta say this. Who do you think most people felt was responsible for all these?
God.
They said, he must have convinced her, he must have poisoned her mind. When eventually it goes to trial, there's a real serious problem that people have in convicting a woman of these horrific crimes. This is where we have to kind of draw a legal line here. Talking about what's the level of culpability. So first thing we're going to talk about is just what an accomplice is. An accomplice is just someone that helps what's called the principal, the person who did commit the crime. The accomplice helps them do that. Now, when I say helps them do that, it can take a whole bunch of different levels. This is why I asked you that last question before we start here. If you know someone's going to commit a crime and you do nothing to stop it, are you guilty of that crime as well? Don't you shake your head no?
Not completely guilty.
All right, so are you kind of saying you're guilty of something, but you're not guilty of that crime?
Yeah.
I think that's very fair. So let's just kind of go up a bit. If you know about it and you help commit that crime, say for example, you let them have your car to commit the crime, are you now more culpable in it? Okay? What if you go up a level and this person's gonna rob a bank and you rob the bank with them? Now you guys are in it together. This is kind of what being the accomplice is. When we're talking about being an accomplice for a crime, if you're like Bonnie and Clyde and you commit the same crime together, you are both culpable. You can both be charged for the same crime. Now, Bonnie and Clyde, it was pretty easy. They were both doing the same things. They were holding up the banks, they were robbing people. It's pretty easy to say that yes, both of you did this. I start with this one because we're going to kind of go down the list, the levels of culpability. Now, in this particular instance, I do give this example. If all you do is drive the getaway car, you can be guilty of the same crime as the principal. You can be found to be, you can be charged with robbing the bank as well, even if you didn't step foot in it. So let me kind of ask about this example here. If your friend robs a bank and you drive a getaway car, are you just as responsible as they are? Do you think that's fair?
No.
No, why not, Sasha?
Because I'm not doing, like, I just know about it and I'm helping them out, but I'm not actually doing it.
But you didn't step foot in the bank, so you didn't rob the bank,
Yeah.
but you helped that person rob the bank.
But they're the ones that did it.
Yep, I think you make an excellent point, certainly. Connor, something?
I think that's fair if you're charged with like robbing the bank too, because like you're how they're robbing the bank.
Okay.
You're their like means of transportation.
I think that's so well said, too. Now let me say this. Could they have robbed the bank without you?
Yes.
Maybe they drive their own getaway car? So you could. Was there something else to make that?
Like, they could have robbed the bank on their own, they couldn't have necessarily gotten away.
Sure.
as easily.
This is where we kind of have just this gray area. When you're looking at accomplices, it's always kind of difficult. Now again, Bonnie and Clyde, very easy. They're going to be charged with some other things as well, including conspiracy. Now, conspiracy is going to be that you are aware and you are in fact involved in the planning of a crime. So again, let's kind of go back to this example. Let's say you help someone prepare to rob a bank.
Like, you bought the masks and stuff?
Yeah, we'll say that, certainly. You at least thought about it, you had, you looked at the map, whatever. You never set foot in the bank, you don't drive the getaway car, you have nothing to do with the actual bank robbery itself. But if you help plan, there is a separate crime for that. Conspiracy to rob a bank. Now, I want to be certain we're clear. Do we see the differentiation between actually helping rob that bank versus the planning? You can be charged with, well, all right, let me back up. If you, in fact, are the getaway driver, like we talked about, you can be charged with robbing the bank and conspiracy to rob a bank. Now, we're going to talk more about it later, but any prosecutor worth their salt is going to throw every charge they can at you and hope something sticks. Now, if it's pretty easy that you did, in fact, rob that bank, any prosecutor is going to say, yep, we're going to get you on that, and we're going to get you on conspiracy, and we're going to get you on fraud. We can get all sorts of things thrown in there, and hopefully we'll get you convicted on all of them. But if one fails, we always have a backup. They can always throw conspiracy at you. Now, Bonnie and Clyde, they're going to be guilty of several different things, including conspiracy. Now, of course, conspiracy is a bit of a lesser sentence than the actual crime itself, but just the act of planning is going to be a crime too. Now, I want to be certain. Conspiracy still exists today. You can be charged with conspiracy of all sorts of different things. Conspiracy for burglary, conspiracy for murder, conspiracy for second-degree murder. All these things are on the table. Now, like I said, this right here is kind of a lesser extent. It's kind of a lesser crime because you're not actually doing it. You're just planning it. Now let's again kind of go back to this example I've been using. If you just know about it and you don't do anything, could you be considered involved in the conspiracy? Could you be considered involved in the planning?
No.
If you know about it and say anything about it, you're a conspirator. Now, Sasha, let me just ask you. You say no. Why do you say no?
Because I'm not helping them out.
You're not helping them do it.
Yeah.
Sure. I think you could absolutely make that case because a lot of times the problem with conspiracy is there's not necessarily enough evidence to say, what did you know and when did you know it? Did you actually help with this? It's a little tough. Now, it of course depends on the jury, but a lot of times conspiracy is a little harder to define. Now, next one, talking about accessories. There are two kinds of accessories. People who are going to help commit this crime, who know that it's going to take place, who assist in the crime itself. If you know it's going to happen, if you help commit that crime, then you are what's called accessory before the fact. If you know what's going to happen, if you help commit that crime, you can be charged with the same crime as the principal. So again, going back to our example. If you help someone rob a bank, but you're just a getaway driver, and during that bank robbery, someone gets shot, can you be convicted of murder? Yes. This is the thing about being an accessory before the fact. If you are aware it's going to happen, if you know it's going to take place, and you even assist in it, you are more culpable than the other side of this. The other side is what's called accessory after the fact. You help someone in their commission of a crime, but you knew nothing about it until it happened. So I use this example. Your friend robs a bank, runs to your house and says, I need your help. If you didn't know they were going to do it beforehand, you cannot be considered before the fact. But if you give them any kind of assistance, you can be considered an accessory after the fact. Yes, sir.
So like, say that same thing happens where like a friend says like robs a convenience store and then comes to your house and then like you don't do anything, you don't like want to get involved, but like you don't call the cops or you don't like help them either way.
Kind of just say, nope, I don't want anything to do with this.
Do you still get in trouble for that?
I'm so glad you said that, because if you just distance yourself and say, I don't want anything to do with this, but don't call the police, you can be charged. Now, you ask an excellent question because you can be charged with these other crimes. Now, if you help that person, if you say, yes, come on inside, I'll give you money, I'll give you my car, whatever, so you can get out of here. That's a way different level of involvement. If you say, I want nothing to do with this and don't call the police, you could probably be charged with obstruction of justice. But you're not going to get charged with the other things. Harboring a fugitive, helping them escape, helping them in any way, that's going to be a much more serious crime than obstructing justice. Great question. Now, I know I kind of had to move fast there. So Connor, was there something else you wanted to ask?
No, I figured it out.
Okay. Now, like I say, these are separate crimes as well. Now, they have a much less harsh punishment than being an accessory before the fact, even being an accessory after the fact. Because you can be charged with multiple things if you help someone try to get away from committing a crime. Now, I know I'm going a little bit fast. Are we okay? Okay. Number 4 is what's called a crime of omission. Now again, I'm kind of going down the list here because a crime of omission simply means you did not do something. You failed to act. This can be a crime. Now, I always kind of use the classic example here because this one's sort of easy to explain. If you do not pay your taxes, you didn't act. You didn't do something. That's a crime. If you do not act, if you don't do this, you can be thrown in prison for not paying your taxes. Now, I want to sort of throw out this question because I get this one a lot, and we'll kind of talk about it more. If you see a crime happening and you do nothing, are you guilty of a crime of omission? Not doing something. Say you just see it on the streets and you just say, nope, I'm staying out of it. Could you be guilty of a crime of omission? So you're saying yes?
Yeah.
Because you're not doing something? I will tell you, it's possible, but it's hard. Really hard, actually. These crimes of omission, I'm putting in these ones that are more specific. You don't pay your taxes. You are basically choosing to not obey the law by not doing something. Now, in order to get to where I need to be, I think I'll be good on time, but I might have to go just a little bit quickly here. There's one more thing we're going to talk about. Last thing. What we're going to see as, not necessarily the bottom of the rung here, but I want to use this as kind of a springboard for something else. Last one is, we're going to talk about what's called preliminary crimes. By preliminary, what I mean is, these are crimes that take place that are kind of the planning, they're the build-up.